guest. He's actually our guest speaker. That's why we're kind of here a little bit. If anybody's not familiar with Mr. Jake Hall, aka the manufacturer Millennial, has a lot going on, and I made a mistake this morning. I said he has 75,000 followers. He has 100,000 plus followers. He let me know that. Appreciate that. And in the TikTok world, whatever, he's got over 100 million views. It's obvious he's doing something right and knows a lot about what he's doing. Without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Jake Hall.
Awesome.
So, yep.
Normally when I'm speaking in front of like a room of about 700 or 800 or 1,000 people. So I'm looking forward to this one because I want it to be much more of an open conversation. So while I'm going to roll through the keynote here, I really want this to be interactive. So if there's something along the way where like you have questions or you want feedback, start talking and raise your hand and I'll stop talking. That's like how I've learned to talk with my wife at home. I'm talking when she starts and I'll just stop and listen. The same thing here. We'll just practice that when I'm traveling. But for me, I've been in manufacturing for 18 years now. So I'm 34. The beard does not match my age. I say this because I have 2 daughters and then a mother-in-law and a sister-in-law that live with me, and then my wife, so that's why the beard here is the way it is. The interesting thing about manufacturing is there's a lot of misconceptions that still exist, and my goal today is to talk to you a bit more about what do millennials and Gen Zs feel about manufacturing. How can we as educators and machine builders and end users and people that work in the industry do a better job to really drive manufacturing forward and skilled trades forward? How do we do that? So with the industry changing, we all hear about AI. So everyone know what AI is? Has anyone used like ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Yes, at some okay. So I thought instead of me doing my normal intro, I'm gonna have ChatGPT write my intro for me for this event. And then on top of that, I'm gonna have it being written in the voice of Morgan Freeman. And then I'm gonna use AI Morgan Freeman voice to then read that introduction that I created with ChatGPT. So here's Morgan Freeman introducing this event.
Welcome, friends. Imagine a gathering of minds, a convergence of knowledge, and an opportunity like no other. The Education Drives Automation event beckons you with its resounding call. As manufacturers, educators, and engineering professionals, attending this event is an investment in your growth, success, and the betterment of your organization. This is your opportunity to delve into the latest industry trends and gain invaluable manufacturing, robotics, and educational insights into technology and the future workforce. As a professional, understanding your industry is crucial, and this event will equip you with the knowledge to change the future of your industry. I am thrilled to introduce today's keynote speaker, a handsome gentleman, a master of smoking barbecue meat, and the world's greatest Chicago Cubs fan, Jake Hall, the manufacturing millennial. So sit back and relax here in Scranton, Pennsylvania, where knowledge meets inspiration, and discover a world of endless possibilities. Welcome to the Education Drives Automation event.
All right, there you go. Thank you, Morgan Freeman. Pretty cool, right? You know what AI can do. So, we already had an introduction. I'm a millennial, been in the industry for 18 years. 100,000 followers across like TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, with over 100 million views. So, like for me, I think when we look at younger generations now, we consume information, we learn differently than what the Gen Xer and the baby boomer, the greatest generation, learned from. And so I was able to find a really early demand coming out of the pandemic in 2020 when I started doing social media, and it was one of those things where there was really there was a vacuum that was needing to happen, and I just happened to fill that vacuum with really fun, engaging content. I talk about the future workforce, what technologies and trends are going to impact manufacturing in the future, how is automation and robotics going to be changing the way we work in the future, workforce development, and then skilled trades, and then as well, really what matters to me is, so I'm a girl dad. I have Kaylee over on the left. She's 6. Cassie, she's 2. She's 3 now. She was 2 in that picture. But for me, when you look at and I mentioned this morning for some of the crowd that was here earlier. When you look at manufacturing is like 78% male dominated and like 22% female in the industry when we look at the ratios of working in manufacturing. And for me, like, I have such a passion for manufacturing. My daughters have a huge passion for robots and building things with me. Yet there's this, basically, when they hit elementary and middle school, that's when the fall off happens, where then women don't want to get involved with manufacturing, they don't want to do STEM. It's happening more and more, but there's this massive gap that's happening in the industry. So I want to figure out how do we as an industry do a better job to also make it so we can get more women involved as well. So to highlight real quick is some refresh numbers. Manufacturing is substantial. We always hear that manufacturing left America, manufacturing doesn't matter anymore, but the numbers just prove completely different. So 8.5% of the workforce in the US still works in manufacturing. It's up 450,000 jobs since 2022, and we're about $2.5 trillion industry is US manufacturing. So if you were to take US manufacturing, it would be the 7th largest country in the world in terms of total GDP. So US manufacturing as its own industry is larger than the rest of the country's total GDPs in the world combined. And I think this goes to show that people produce, people buy, and people consume. And US manufacturing is still the leading really industry that's doing. But when we look at what's happening in the industry, there's a lot of trends that I'm sure if you're on the end user side, you've experienced this, where here is basically unemployment percentages over time within manufacturing, going back from data from 2002 all the way up to the pandemic, and then January 22nd. So we were averaging around a 2.5 to 3.5% unemployment rate in manufacturing with around 300,000 open jobs in manufacturing. So then all of a sudden we jumped up to, we actually passed over 1 million unfulfilled jobs in manufacturing at the end of 2020. Right now we're at right around 700,000 open jobs in manufacturing. So when you look at what is the economical impact of that, we lost $92 billion in 2021 simply because we didn't have enough people in manufacturing to do the jobs that exist out there. And I think that's just the crazy part is, like, there was opportunity to do business, there was opportunity to manufacture, there was opportunity to make, but we just simply didn't have the available resources because we went from a 3% to a 7%. And then 2022, the numbers were 122 billion. 2023 hasn't come out yet for numbers. That comes out in June. But it's just one of those things that's like, we always think that, automation is going to be the death of things. But automation, though, in a lot of cases, is what keeps manufacturing moving forward, and it brings new people into the industry. So when we think of what's happening in the industry, right now, if we have 700,000 open jobs, Deloitte predicts that there's going to be 2.4 million open jobs in manufacturing by 2030. And this is really where the numbers start to get scary, where if all of a sudden we're thinking that the average age of people working in manufacturing right now is 51 years old, and there's a lot of older age beyond that, go 10 years from now and all of a sudden we realize that all the tribal knowledge that used to work in the industry has left the industry, all the skilled people that knew how to run your equipment and the industry are now retiring, and that that information wasn't passed on. That's the big gap that we see. So how do we as an industry, how do we as educators, how do we as machine builders and end users really fix this gap that's happening? And I think the big thing is we need to understand what are the current 4 generations working in manufacturing. And that's what's exciting about it, right? When you look at other industries, you go into retail or you go into a restaurant or a hospitality, you don't see, baby boomers working at Starbucks. You don't see baby boomers working in retail in a lot of cases. But within manufacturing, you have this age group that goes from 65 all the way down to right out of high school working in manufacturing across baby boomers, Gen Xers, Millennials, and Gen Zs. So it's exciting to see that diversity in generations, but at the same time, but there's a lot of picking on each other that happens, right? The okay boomers, Millennials don't do anything, they're a bunch of lazy kids. And it happens, right? But what we found out is when I did some research and studies, we could come to an agreement that each generation has some unique characteristics. So baby boomers are a few things. One, they have a strong work ethic, they have a hierarchy structure, and they have job stability. Anyone want to guess how many average jobs the average baby boomer is going to have their entire career?
2.
2. 3 is the correct answer from the gentleman in the back. 3. The average baby boomer will have 3 different jobs their entire career. Now, this isn't like I worked at a company and I got a promotion and then that's like a different job. No, it's 3 different companies throughout their entire career. Anyone want to guess how many different jobs a millennial is going to have by the time they're 30? 11. 11. So when you look at, baby boomers had 3 jobs their entire career. Millennials had 11 different jobs by the age of 30. You're like, what in the world is going on? And I think we feel that as end users. If you're in the HR business or you're in the hiring side, or if anything to do with bringing people on board, you feel that every single day. And that's a big cause of what we're facing. And this isn't just manufacturing that's running into this issue. This is every industry that's running into this issue of constant moving from millennials and also with Gen Zs. The Gen X is the next generation, work-life balance, independent workers, entrepreneurial spirit. In fact, we found out with research that we did that the Gen X generation has started more businesses as an entrepreneurship level than any generation before them, and more likely than any other generation that will ever follow them. More jobs and businesses will be created from that Gen X generation. Then we have millennials who like collaboration, they're tech savvy, they have career development, and that's why we see a lot of times millennials like to move around a lot because they're focused on how do they grow throughout their career, how do they create a bigger impact. Not all the times they're not always chasing the bigger paycheck, they're chasing an opportunity that's going to give them more purpose and growth within the companies. And then the Gen Zers, the multitasking, learning independency, the DEI is a big thing for them that they're working on. And I think just like DEI, where all that other stuff that exists, it's like they just want to be able to say, hey, I recognize that the company will recognize them beyond just a employee number, but more of an individual. Because they really care about the impact that they make from an individual standpoint, not as a company standpoint, and how they can grow and contribute to something greater than themselves. So what does the future employee look like, and how does technology fit in? I think we can all agree, if everyone here in this room is manufacturing from some standpoint. We all do more jobs now than what we did before the pandemic in 2020, right? It wasn't just a electrical, engineer or electrical maintenance person. Now all of a sudden it's mechatronics, and we're doing a lot more tasks than what we're doing. And now cross-training is a huge thing that's coming out there. We're learning it within, even the programs over here. We're talking about the robotics program. Well, it's not just robotics, it's also about AC/DC. It was also talking about machinists and welding and fabricating. It's one of those things where now all of a sudden we have to learn all these different skill sets because the people in our industry are getting smaller and smaller, so we have to learn how to do more and more. And how does technology fit into that? Interest and aptitude for technology. We're learning that new generations of millennials and Gen Zs are really good with technology. How do we embrace that technology? Attention to detail is the other big thing, right? When we look at the people who've been working in manufacturing for 20, 30, 40 years, they have a lot of tribal knowledge. They have been able to do the same thing over and over again and gain that experience, be able to walk up to a machine, sniff it, lick it, hear it, and they know what's wrong with it. That tribal knowledge is really hard to be passed on to a future generation if it's not just for simply the years of experience that they gain from it. And how can technology fill that skills and that tribal knowledge gap that would be passed down to the next generation? So here's where the numbers even get more scary. Excuse me. This is a research study that was done with Talent, and it was about interviewing 1,420 high school students, and they asked, what industries do you want to go into when you graduate? And it was multiple choice options, where it wasn't like those things where, hey, all these numbers are going to add up to 100. That's not the case. They could pick more than one. But on the top was STEM, health sciences, businesses. We go down towards the middle, law, marketing, finance. On the bottom, we have architecture, agriculture, hospitality and tourism, which is being a barista at Starbucks. And then below that, we have manufacturing. Below being a barista at Starbucks. That's where the future generation of Gen Zers want to work. That's kind of crazy. I asked right away, well, how come manufacturing is not part of STEM? Right, that would be the first thing that would come to my mind is, well, wait a second, science, technology, engineering, math, why is manufacturing not there? And then with follow-up, they found out that, well, the perception of Gen Zs was that manufacturing is a stark, dirty, dull, dangerous, dumb industry that doesn't have technology, engineering, innovation. They don't think of robots in manufacturing. So what they found out was it's not that the generation doesn't want to be a part of manufacturing, it's just that they're not aware of what manufacturing has to offer. So then the question is how do we as an industry open up the perception of what this next generation has? And a great example would have been what would happen today, right? We brought in 30 students part of the robotics team, and also part of the STEM program that's at that high school, and they were able to walk through these facilities and see what was happening. But in a lot of cases, so 50 students of that, how big was that school district? 1,400 students?
2,000 total through Wilkes-Barre.
Okay, so 50 students saw that, the other 1,950 did not. And so while it's a great progress moving forward, how do we as a greater industry continue to move forward where this one event got 50, how does the next event hosted by your company get the next 50? And then how does your event hosted, the next one get the next 50? How does your event open up an open house and you invite that local elementary school to come in and check out your facility and you have their parents come on board as well? You know, how when you guys have a Halloween night or a parade, you guys are having a booth to talk about robots in manufacturing. That's the change that happens. So the big thing that I always like to do is break down barriers of, you know, this is where you can pick on me as a millennial, and the nice part about it, there's actually quite a few millennials in the room with me today. So I feel like I'm not completely abnormal. Normally when I'm going to conferences and associations, like the average age is like 50 and above, there's maybe like 10 or 15 millennials in the crowd. But you know, so to kick this off a little bit, I'm going to throw a couple pictures up there. You tell me what it is. So what is this first one?
Oh, it's a participation trophy.
It's a participation
Can I get a
trophy.
ribbon?
Yeah, exactly. but the whole thing is for so long, millennials had this idea of, oh, we just want a good job, and hey, you were really bad at it, but you still got a thumbs up. Was it the millennials that asked for that, or who actually wanted to hand those out? It was the parents, right? So it's that millennial, that Gen Xer, in the background over there. Was it you?
You're not getting a trophy.
No, you're not getting a trophy.
I already asked for one.
I don't even know if you're getting paid.
But it was one of those things where this idea of we all of a sudden we label millennials as this generation that just like, oh, as you try, they just want pats on the backs all the time. That's not the case. That's not who millennials are. What is this other one? Willy Wonka, right? Yeah, I don't care. I want it now. When you say that, I don't care what I want it now. That's a sense of what? Entitlement. So, but what if all of a sudden it wasn't one of those things where the generation was entitled? What if it was simply saying that, maybe millennials and Gen Zers are a lot more aware of what they have as a career opportunity that didn't exist to you as an older generation 10, 15 years ago. I do about 100,000 miles on Delta every year traveling. I fly a lot, and I take a lot of Uber or Lyfts. Who here has ridden in an Uber or a Lyft in the past year? Who ridden it 10 years ago? Were you in the West Coast, like in San Francisco or something? 10 years ago?
In Boston, yeah.
Okay. So one of like San Francisco or Boston, one of the very few. Okay. But my point is, those jobs didn't exist 10 years ago. Yet all of a sudden, when my dad's like, oh, how you go work for this job to get a bunch of money, and I'm like, why would I do that when I can drive in my car and I can get paid more than I can in manufacturing and get paid $23, $24, $25, $30 an hour? Do you guys have an Amazon facility out here in Scranton? Okay. Do you guys have Amazon Flex as an app? Are you guys aware of that? So Amazon Flex, you're aware of that. So okay, so you would have the option to go on your phone, right? And then did you have the option where you could select the hours that you wanted to work?
Yeah.
Okay. And then so you could say, hey, I wanted to work from like 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and load all the packages in my car and drive around and drop them off. They would tell you how much you would get paid right away, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll get a paycheck deposited almost instantly when you got that completed, right?
Yeah, extra Christmas.
Yeah. Do you as manufacturers pay your employees every time they log out every day at 5 p.m.? You don't? Wait, so why would they want to come and work for you?
You're fired.
Yeah. but so my point is that here's the guy that flew me out here. But my point of the fact is that we need to stop blaming kids for like, oh, they don't want to work with us because they don't have a good work ethic and they think they should get paid $22 an hour, when in reality, millennials and Gen Zs are simply just trying to survive in a lot of cases to be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment, and they look at as short-term fulfilling needs as driving for Uber or Lyft is going to benefit them long-term. However, here's a great example. You're like, I didn't get paid to be here. You're going to be here. Did Amazon ever offer you a promotion for driving for them for a year?
Well, I don't think I did for a year, but
Okay.
there was incentives.
But the point is, like, for Uber or Lyft, if you drive for them, you're not like all of a sudden getting promoted to like senior 5-star driver of Lyft after you worked for them for a year. There wasn't a mentor working at Lyft that would guide you through a career path to gain new skills that would make you more valuable longer term. And so that's where this separation happens, where us as an industry, we need to realize that manufacturing, while we're competing with short-term Lyft, Amazon, Uber, we realize that we create careers that last a lifetime. But the hard part is how do we do a better job communicating that? How do we do a better job telling a story where, hey, I can walk in as a maintenance tech or as a machine assembler and then become a maintenance technician and then become a line leader and then become a maintenance leader and then a plant manager and then engineering. Like, those are stories that happen in manufacturing. If you've been in manufacturing 15, 20, or 30 years, you've probably experienced those firsthand. Yeah, we do a really bad job communicating that to the next generation. So that's how we need to do this better idea of millennials and Gen Zs might be aware of other opportunities, but what they're not aware of is how they can be successful long-term in their career. Where those jobs right now, working in retail, working for Uber, working for Lyft, they're short-term. They're not going to provide for them. As soon as they want a family, they want a spouse, they want kids, they want a house, those options really get thrown out the door really quick. What's this last one? Avocado toast, right? It's delicious. You're welcome. You know, it's one of those things like we get like, oh my gosh, millennials, they spend 6 hours on a cup of coffee, yet every time I see it, it's like all of a sudden all the old adults are like, you know what, maybe that black Folgers cup isn't that good anymore, and I kind of like my espressiato, macchiato, double shot awada, coffee. And that's okay, I get it, but avocado toast is one as well. We can, say you're welcome for opening up your taste buds on what good food tastes like. and we'll take credit for that as millennial. So when we look at generations, there's different ways that we're learning now. So what is this first one that we look at for anyone recognize this?
Haynes manual.
A Haynes repair manual, right? When we went out there and we got our first car, it was one of those things where, hey, you wanted to fix something, you went to a Haynes repair manual and you learned how to replace an alternator or brake pads or something under the hood, replace a timing belt. What about this one? Betty Crocker's cookbook, right? You went over to your mother-in-law's house and that was open the meatloaf page and you're like, I should have ate before I came over. But that was the old way of generations in a lot of cases learning things. And I think older millennials, we know what that is, but if you were to ask a young Gen Zer, they would have no idea what that is. They probably saw this at a museum, or up in the shelf that hasn't been taken down in 5-10 years. But now all of a sudden we're using what? YouTube. We're going on
YouTube University.
Pinterest and TikTok to learn recipes. And so now we're seeing is when you were put baby boomers and Gen Xers over here, millennials and Gen Zers over here, it makes a lot of sense, but over time, the older generation grew up over there and they came this way, where if you were to expect a younger generation now to walk past the other way, you would look like you're crazy, right? Because no one wants to go and open up a Haynes repair manual when I can go on YouTube and learn how to replace my brake pads. It's just one of those things. It's a lot easier visual indicating, but yet instead of generations, now we have manufacturing. Who's still using, in a lot of cases, if you're a larger company, who's still using print-based work instructions to do tool changes and job setups? If you're working in manufacturing, in a lot of cases, that's probably the case, right? You're still using that where now all of a sudden there's so many really cheap, easy apps where you can upload PDFs, you could take pictures to qualify steps along the way through assembly, where now all of a sudden it makes zero sense to be using paper-based work instructions when digital work instructions are doing that. Are you using digital tools to train your future employees? Are you using the cell phone as a means to limit your employees or enable your employees to learn more and to problem solve on their own? And I think it's one of those things, the mentality that you take as a company is going to be one that's going to allow you to figure out how beneficial and how important is your employees going to be to you long term. So another fun stat out there, where do we get our news and information from in 2023? We find out that, obviously there's probably not people over the age of 40 that are getting print publication with the work. Who here still gets the newspaper? Besides the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. What are you, local newspaper? Or
Yeah.
Okay, not a magazine, but you still get a newspaper?
Yeah, it takes me about 5 minutes to read because I do jumble.
Okay. But the point is, no matter, more than likely, we're hopping up, we're opening up Reddit, we're opening up Twitter, we're opening up our favorite news network app right onto our phone, and that's how we're getting information these days. This almost means that technology is a new means of learning and communicating, and the old way of doing things is just leaving the industry. In fact, when you look at social media, it has a massive impact, right? There's 3 billion users on Facebook now. YouTube, Instagram, all have more users than the world's largest countries of China and India. You look at TikTok, LinkedIn now has 900 million users. That's pretty crazy to think about. LinkedIn, what you thought was simply a platform to upload your resume, now has a thriving community of people in every profession and industry that exists out there. And so when you look at the facts, 900 million users are on LinkedIn, 10,000 job applications are being sent every minute. Every second, 3 new people create a profile, and over 52 million people are actively looking for new jobs on LinkedIn. It's crazy what that platform has to offer. But what's even crazier is this. When we were out there, and this is great, like this is part of my presentation, but the fact that I'm in Scranton, this makes this even better. But 70% of the companies, if you were in HR, you would look at a person's personal profile or an individual's profile to understand who they were before you hired them. Now, here's the reality check. 85% of millennials and Gen Zs will look at your profile as an individual and your company's page online to understand if they even want to come to work for your company. And like, that's the alarming part these days is if you as a company are not showcasing your people, are not showcasing your culture, are not showcasing your career opportunities, they're just not going to come and want to work for you because they don't see themselves as part of that company if all you're doing is throwing your line cards up on your website all the time or on your social media pages. If you have no culture or community, you're really missing out on a lot of opportunities. And this was the other one too. So the bathroom test, it's a fun thing that I started when I started touring manufacturing facilities and doing a little more consulting. So from 2022 to last year, I've now been to 146 different manufacturing facilities across the U.S. So I toured a lot of facilities. And you know, when the leadership teams ask me, hey, how do you communicate and how do you do culture? I say, let's go check out your bathroom. And the reason for that is because I think the bathroom is the best way to understand how your employees think about your company and how your company thinks about their employees, right? So we go through an airport. If you go to Atlanta or Dallas, there's 4 or 5 now that have these indications and stack lights on the floor. They tell you if that stall is open or not, so you don't need to do that creepy Pee-Pee Tom thing and look through that crack and figure out if someone's there. Then you make eye contact, and then you're thinking about that in the flight for the next 4 hours. It's just it's mental. Now also the stack lights can make that in technology a lot easier. So an airport bathroom has technology to understand if that stall's occupied and in use. And if you have an overflow, that light will blink red and maybe a siren or something like that. But we can go to a machine floor in a manufacturing facility that has $1 million pieces of equipment, yet we don't even have an indication or a status light to let us know if that machine's running or not. You have $1 million of production running through your facility, but you don't even have digital understanding of what your productivity was, what your scrap weight was, what your downtime was, what your operator efficiency was. And you're still using this, whiteboard to write down operator, time, scrap, parts, good, bad. It's like, are we living in the 21st century, or are we still thinking like writing on a chalkboard is the best way to run a multi-million-dollar manufacturing facility? And like, that's the big thing though. So all of a sudden, Gen Zers like, man, we can put technology anywhere, but we can't put it in manufacturing, yet they want me to come and work for them. That's like the battle that we have to face. But then more importantly, going back to the culture side of manufacturing, look at it from a woman's perspective. If a woman who more than likely is walking into a manufacturing facility where she might be one of a few women who's already working in there, and she walks into that bathroom, and that bathroom is just absolutely destroyed. There's not a trash can for her. There's not hygienic products in there for her. Is she gonna feel welcome? Is she gonna be like, yeah, manufacturing's for women because they don't care about us? Like, that's the mindset though that we need to, as leaders in the industry, be wondering, how do we make sure that from the bathroom all the way up to the front of the office showcases that we are an industry that wants to bring everyone aboard. So Industry 4.0 is the technology that everyone's talking about now, from the modernization of Industry 1.0, which is the steam, to now we have robots, digital solutions, and cybersecurity and augmented reality. In fact, when we think of augmented reality, we're seeing this, right? Anyone play with the Apple Vision Pro, right? You know, it's a little weird. People walking around in public, driving a Tesla. I don't know if that's safe or not. But what we're learning though is this reminding me of a commercial like that happened 10, 15 years ago, and how a company was trying to leverage technology to really tell a story of how they're trying to spread their brand, to get more people excited about what they're doing. And remember Google Glasses? Okay.
No.
So here is how Pepsi used Google Glasses as a commercial to reach an audience. Let's see how they use technology.
Glasses cam to show you everything that I see.
How you doing?
Hello. I'm Mike.
Hey, nice to meet you, Mike.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah. Nice and easy. Head on out, and whenever you're ready.
Are you ready to go ahead and drive?
Okay, sure.
Whoa.
That's all right.
A little more than I'm used to.
It's got some power, so just get a feel for it. Okay, all right. So ease off your foot. Ease up. You are liable for any damages to the vehicle, so please stop the car. Slow down. Slow down. Slow down. You can't go through that gate, Mike. Stop. Stop. Watch it! Watch out! You're gonna wreck this car. You're liable for it if you wreck it. Mike, stop the car! Stop the car right now! No, oh my God! Just take us back.
You're right over there, Steve.
Oh, you're an idiot. I'm gonna kill you. Oh, God almighty! Who do you think you are?
No. Yeah, not what you think. Not what you think. No, it's just a prank. We're just having fun. Look, this is a camera. Here's a camera. There's a camera. Look, it was all just fun. Look, I'm Jeff Gordon.
Pepsi did a really good job, not even talking about their product, but using technology to tell a story. And I think it's the same thing that we need to be focusing on more within our generation. So how do we tell a better story? One thing I think is generative AI. It's a great way to make our lives a lot easier. And so if you use ChatGPT before, awesome. Here's a few more tips. And then there's another app called Perplexity, which I recommend. It's based on generative AI, but it's much more educational, research based. It actually has, throughout its answers, it gets references to the actual data that you're getting. But here's a couple ones. One is job description tool for inclusiveness. If you have a job description that's out there, upload it to ChatGPT and say, how do we make this more inclusive for everyone? How do we make it more exciting for everyone who would want to apply to it? Employee survey for feedback, recruitment and screening, marketing strategy, design, employee engagement and recognition, creating policies and memos. Like marketing strategy is a great example of that. If you're a small company and you want to build out a marketing strategy, you can go online and go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm a company that does this. Upload your line cards, upload your about section, upload the types of jobs that you do, the type of customers that you have, and say, hey, how do I build out a 12-month marketing campaign that has, weekly posts on social media, a monthly blog, this, and it will literally guide you through that entire process of building out a marketing campaign specific to your company. That's the tools that ChatGPT can do to make your lives just so much easier. When we talk about technology as well, here's another great example. This is Kaylee. We were up Christmas last year, and she was building a Mario Lego set. And for me, it's just incredible, right? So instead of paper-based work instructions, she can now download the app on her iPad, select the job set, and she can now, you saw that, with her hand, go around and guide that set, and she can now assemble, really building instructions that are way beyond her age and complexity, because these tools are making it simpler and simpler. Same way we have with technology now here. This is projected augmented reality, the same thing, but kind of for adults. It's guiding an operator through a task that a lot of times is a very heavy manual operation. And now this worker can do inspection and assembly in a way that is keeping pace with them. It's doing quality checks. It's doing verification. It's very low risk for a manufacturer who's adopting technology like this. And at the end of the day, it's a lot more fun, right? Instead of an operator having to go and look at a screen or having to look at through a 3D binder to say, okay, here's step 1, do this. Here's a picture. Step 2, do this. Now all of a sudden we have real-time guidance. That's a way that's going to excite this next generation and at the same time improve quality of what you're doing. Another example of this is virtual reality, augmented reality glasses. So you can wear devices like this, and if you want to do maintenance technician on a job, or you want to do a repair or something like that, a lot of times companies are now sending an augmented reality glasses with them, where they can now do like their own preventative and maintenance and repair by guiding them through this digital world of a digital twin, basically, of what their equipment and machines do. Other devices are what we call device wearables. They're ones that the human operator directly works with to do another task. So in this case, this is a wearable barcode by ProGlove. They can go out there, instead of carrying around a traditional handheld barcode reader, they can go out there and scan stuff from a high-low, like 30 feet away. This is called Iron Glove. It's one of those things where if you're lifting up heavy components all the time, it can give you an additional 15 pounds of grasp strength in your arm, where all of a sudden now I'm not getting the same physical stress and the same physical labor that's happening before. You can go in there with an app and decide how much strength I want to have per glove. It's one of those things, right? If workers are not being so physically exhausted coming home from work every day, they're a lot less likely to actually leave the job and quit. Reaching the next generation of new technology is important, and that's exactly what we did this morning, if you're able to see what was happening here. Here's a couple of open houses we did. This is one that I did with MBI Automation. We had a parent kids open house where they had a robotics team here. This was their first tech robotics team, and instead of just having the kids come, they had the parents come at 6 p.m. that night. So all the workers stayed late, and then all the parents brought the kids to the school, had an open house, had a party, and then they were able to showcase the cool technology that was in there. I was able to bring a couple robots along, and then they could see industrial robots, they could see a mobile AMR robot driving around. And for them, they just got a great opportunity to see what technology has to offer. And then over here was the Kent Career Tech Center, which is a big thing that we have in West Michigan, where we have close to 1,500 students who go there every single day to be learn part of skilled trades and techs. But the same thing, right? So all of a sudden, that robot dog that was used as outreach is the same thing where we see now in Boss Dynamics, where these robots are now going through the factory, on the floor, and they're doing mobile IoT and mobile inspection in a lot of warehouses and facilities. Like, it's one of those things where one kid thinks it's a game, now all of a sudden this is an actual product that they can use that's going to get them excited about manufacturing and excited about the jobs they do. But more importantly, they get excited so they want to tell others. Right? If you're a 22-year-old and you go to a friends with your bar, and like, oh, I walked 6.5 miles today, walking up to machines, reading a dial, and then writing the temperature of that dial down, versus, oh, I drove a robot around and I had this robot do this autonomous inspections, and I'm the robot wrangler, the handler for this dog. What sounds more exciting to them, and what would make people say, well, geez, that actually sounds pretty fun, working with a robot dog and creating paths and driving it around all day? That's exciting. I get to use like a controller, like a Xbox controller. That's the type of technology innovation that gets these young kids excited and wants to talk and share about it. Other technology, this is just another one that I shared. It's called Mimic, where we can take a collaborative robot and we can teach a robot to do painting and spraying and grinding and finishing and picking, placing tasks without even needing to control it through a teach pendant or grab the robot arm itself and move it around. It's all of a sudden, I can now use a joystick and that robot will just mimic my exact moves. So now all of a sudden the barrier to entry to automation is at an all-time low, because I can do and automate these tasks at a very simple level. So the risk for manufacturers to adopt this type of automation is at a really low level. And it makes systems integrators, their jobs a lot easier as well, so they can deploy more automation solutions. So what's important to their job? Emphasis on work-life balance, social conscience, desire for flexible work, technological proficiency, diversity in the workplace, and opportunity for feedback. How do we attract and retain? We communicate purpose, adapt to a way of life, invest in the future, and then with that goal in mind, hopefully we can then move this perception of what manufacturing is this dark, dirty, dull, dangerous, dumb industry, up to an industry where the future generation wants to work, and that's the STEM field. So what's next? I don't need to read this because you're already here. The next thing when I'm going to these conferences typically is one of those things where I'm encouraging them, go to your local community tech center, college, get involved with them, have conversations, have educators meet industry, have industry meet education, and talk about that stuff. You're already doing it right here, right now. But the thing, the emphasis on that I really want to highlight is the last one here, social media. Are you using social media to talk about your product, or are you using social media to talk about your people? If you're still highlighting your product, you're using social media wrong. Social media should be a way to communicate what your company is, what the culture is, and what future places that your employees and your future customers have as part of your community. So with that, I guess, I don't know what we have on next. I mean, if you have questions or we talk afterwards, or maybe it's one of those things where we just do the breakout rooms, and if I'll be in here if we want to chat afterwards. There you go. Yeah. Thank you. Good job.
Anybody have any questions or, comments for Jake? No?
Kind of a general question.
Yeah.
Like, the robots are fun and all, but there's a lot of stuff to support a robot. 80%, there's probably 20% robots and 80% hard automation, pneumatics, all kinds of other stuff that support the robot, the stuff that's on the end of the robot, the stuff that gets the utilities to the head of the robot. So there's a lot of stuff that kids will be doing. I would hope that they're told that it's not just driving a joystick. A lot of it could be, documentation and all the other little nuts and bolts that go into supporting the robot industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's automation is so broad, and in terms of support with manufacturing, right? When I talked this morning, within every manufacturing facility, there's HR, there's leadership, there's sales, there's marketing. I mean, and excuse me, even with on the mechanical side, there's robot programming, but there's also all the machine assemblers and the designers and the machinists. So there's all these different components that go into there. But I think what we need to understand is, if we need to be attracting the next generation and bringing them on board, we need to understand what is going to attract them the most. And yes, while end-of-arm tooling is crucial, while all the components and guarding and conveyors and grippers and all that stuff is crucial, that's not what's going to excite to bring that kid out there. Like ours. So
I understand that, but then they have to understand after the excitement settles down, we don't want them jumping in 6 months that it could be that 80% of their job is not doing the exciting stuff.
But you need to make sure you're still giving them that 20% of that job.
Yes.
That is. And there's that balance. And when you have those discussions going forward, we need to realize that a lot of times you have a very set limit on what you can do. It's the elevator pitch of the industry. And so we need to make sure that our elevator pitch is so defined and excitement that we can at least try and pull in as many as we can. And at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Right, when you look at, and it's the funny thing you mentioned, Gentex, totally different Gentex than the Gentex that where I'm from. There's another Gentex in West Michigan that makes mirrors. But when I met with their HR team, 82% of the people they hire within the first 90 days don't stay, and they understand that that's just simply the numbers game that they have to play. So they have to pull in more and more people because just simply a lot of times people don't want to work. Right. And so it's one of those things is, we as an industry can't be beggars and, we can't be choosers anymore, and that's just kind of the numbers that we have to play. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot more that comes to the robot, but at the same time, the robots is what's going to bring that kid into your building in the first place.
I don't think you want to lead with you're going to be working on documentation.
Hey, do you want to push papers?
Really great documentation.
But here's the thing, though.
You'll be working at 90.
But I think the point is, though, there might be those people, once you pull them in, that might enjoy that documentation. Because I have those friends that love to just be on their own, and they would love just to write paperwork all day. I call them nuts, but for them, some people really enjoy that. And so I think that's also important when, during your onboarding process, it's crucial that you share the stories of all the different avenues and paths that lead from the current position that they're going into. So then they can see that the success exists where, hey, you're starting off as an operator. Well, hey, so was Samantha, who was an operator, we're there. Now she's a line leader. Now she's a crew chief. Now she's a maintenance technician. And that needs to be set very on board. And then that Sarah or that Samantha needs to be a mentor for them. Like that's the whole thing. Like that mentorship needs to be set up early on. So it's not just an individual coming in doing an 8 to 5 paycheck.
From my perspective, that's about leadership.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so leadership has to make sure that they're bringing in individuals that have that skill set that they need, that enables to have that broad perspective of the job. And that doesn't matter if it's manufacturing or service or whichever. You're talking about a higher level of ensuring that matching skill from an inclusion perspective that marries it to the job, right? So raise that level from the 20% of excitement to 75 to 80% of excitement from a matching perspective.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where the key is. I'd like you to spend a minute or two in regards to the different generations and how we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not different from a generational perspective. And that's one of the things, as being a boomer and an Xer, I'm on the cusp, so I'm both, right? And I work for individuals that span all of those different generations.
Yeah.
We all want the same thing. So it's not different. Technology evolves, and you have to ensure that you're connecting those individuals from a skill set, a want, and making sure that the job connects with that individual.
Yeah.
So could you spend a minute or two on how we're all the same?
Yeah, I think the one thing is the young generation cares just as much about their friends and family as the older generation does. And the one thing that we need to realize is that if we are the biggest, I would say the biggest turnoff for any millennial and Gen Z is when someone says, we're one big family. That's just like death ears to any millennial and Gen Z, like especially in today's thing. If they says, oh no, come in and put in the extra time because we're one big family. The mindset of millennials and Gen Zs are they don't trust you in a lot of cases just because they hear the stories. They heard the stories of how their parents, got let go in manufacturing, how those jobs led overseas. So they're not trustworthy in a lot of cases. So what you need to realize, and where millennials and Gen Zs are, is if you are, from a leadership perspective, encouraging a healthy work-life balance from the beginning, and you're saying, no, don't stay late, go home, the work will be here on Monday, and you do that mindset, you're creating then a sense of positive culture and loyalty, the same thing that you honor with your own personal traits, but then they're actually seeing that from you.
So I'm going to challenge you.
Yeah.
Work-life balance, how's that different from a boomer and an Xer that wants the same thing? You're saying the same thing. So I don't see it from a generational perspective.
Yeah.
I see your grid of mind that we all want that.
Yeah. So here's how I look at it as, back in your day, I'm not going to put dates on.
No,
But
it's not about that, Mike.
But it is though, and the reason is because a 40-hour job back then bought a house. A 40-hour job today does not buy a house for millennial or Gen Z. And so when all of a sudden they're out there and they're trying to simply survive, or what's your rent?
For rent?
Yeah, for
About $1,400 a month.
$1,400 a month. What was your mortgage
When?
back when you were? How old are you?
First one?
36.
36. Your first house. What was your mortgage?
About $700. Now, equated from an economic perspective, from the early 80s until now.
Yeah.
So right now, no. I'll challenge you. Right. My interest rate was almost 12%. People are right now
8%.
It went back.
right. No, it's about 7 right now. Okay. So that 30 years, 7%. So it all equates from an economic perspective, right? So no, I need to basically say we all want the same thing.
We do.
Right? And that's where I'm challenging you, is that there is no difference from a want perspective. We all want that. Times change, technology advances, economic conditions change.
Yeah.
So that's unfair to say back when you're paying $1,400 and I paid $600 when I had my first mortgage. economics change from that.
So
Hey,
we
Angelo,
want,
I'm not sure that I agree that everybody wants the same thing. I'm sort of more in Jake's camp.
Can I say something as a millennial? So I think COVID did a lot to really change the landscape of work in general, right? And I think so many millennials and Gen Z and the older generations too, everyone knows that time is your greatest resource that you can never get back. So people want jobs, and I'm going to say people want jobs that are flexible so that they can have more time to spend with their friends and family, to spend doing hobbies that they love. So I think, I think time is something that, and is our most valuable, but I think in our culture today, I think workplaces and people are a lot better at communicating that than they were 30 years ago. I think 30 years ago, it was the 40-hour work week, 8 to 5, that's it. Now, especially because of COVID, our world saw that you can work from home and still be productive. You don't have to be strapped to that 40-hour work week. So I think some of the difference is that millennials and Gen Z are better at speaking up for what they want out of a job.
They're louder about it. Everyone wants the same thing. They're just louder about it.
Yeah, I don't think any organization has done more research in this space as Human Synergistics, that did a ton of research on generational desires in the workplace and then their characteristic differences, right? And they determined, as Chelsea suggested, our wants and our desires have remained consistent across generation. What's different, and you can say this is because of the incoming wealth transfer that all these younger generations know about, which gives them a cushion to be a little bit louder than some of the generations before didn't have, but they're just louder about it. Whereas some of the older generations said, this is kind of what life is all about. I just got to grin and bear it, and I'll make up for when I get home. I'll have better quality time with my family once we're sitting around the dinner table or whatever, or I got to keep this job because Lord only knows when the next one's going to come my way. Now that younger generation or those newer generations don't have that, and they could feel and be more vocal about their desires than the older generations, even though those desires have remained the same. We laid out culture study after culture study after culture study in Human Synergistics, and it proves out every single time.
To be able to pay their mortgage and live, they have 2 income earners. Almost every house is 2 income earners, and that's why a lot of the swing shift facilities have a hard time with staff, because if you have 2 parents, or you have a split parent or a split parenting problem, who watches the kids during the day and at night, and that's why the swing shifts and the rotating shifts don't work. You need 2 incomes.
I almost brought a 4-month-old with me today to join our discussions, because I was going to be the one being childcare today. You know, it's just the way the world is now. It's a different work environment.
So I think that expense, like I don't, growing up, I don't remember any of my friends' mothers ever having a job or leaving the house with credit. It was all for the kids. Now
it's the direct opposite for me now. I mainly know 1 out of every 10 women in my life that I know are stay-at-home moms.
You would be a very wealthy individual, living a very high income,
Or stay-at-home dad.
Or stay-at-home dad. Yeah.
Is that tough with manufacturing jobs, the fact that you don't often have the opportunity to work at home?
Tremendously. I think that's just the biggest
thing. You're not
thing.
flexible.
Yeah.
Look at Pete. Pete's running a plant. If 10 people call out, well, that's a line that's not running. If the flu's going around.
So here's a couple things that manufacturers are doing. Their loss rate of labor has gone down, and they're working 4/10s, or they're working 4/11s, and then they're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or they have flexible work weeks. I know some work weeks that work. It's 3 days. They work 3/12, so it's like 3 days on, 4 days off, and then 3 days on. So it's moving, and I think it's one of those things. It's going to be unique for each aspect. But I think what we need to realize is that it's the 8 to 5 is not the try and true only method that exists anymore. I see a lot of manufacturing on the floor jobs that will do 4/10s and then 4 hours on a Friday morning, and they're done every Friday at 12 o'clock. And for them though, that speaks, people love doing that because that gives them flexibility to do something on a Friday afternoon, or they don't work Fridays in the summertime. And I think it's one of those things is companies are now realizing that they have to, at the end of the day, it sucks because it affects the dollar amount at the end of the day, but it's a balance of culture of your employees, right? You're at the same time, you as an industry or as a company are, only as good as the employees that show up to work. And so if you can create a better work environment, you're going to have people who are going to want to stay and continue to work for you. Because at the same time, I always hear challenges, we can't do that. But if you were to look at how much money a company spends on the HR level from a hiring perspective, and they were just to reduce that hiring investment by like 10%, they would be saving millions of dollars. And granted, if you're a $50 million company, it's a lot different than if you're a $500 million company. But it's one of those things is how much time and investment do you put into hiring and onboarding processes. Yeah, it's one of those things is for an onboarding person, 28% of a person's salary goes to onboarding every year of that person's expenses for the first year employee. That's about right. Yeah. Okay. So it's one of those things is what if all of a sudden you were able to reduce onboarding by 25% every year? How much money would that save you? And then where does that balance out in terms of other ways that you can shift? And it's one of those things, it's like there's not this golden book that's out there. I think it's one of those things where you as culture and you as leadership need to have those discussions with your team and your employees to find out what would excite them. Hey, can we do 4 days a week? Can we shift something off where we end days early in the summertime? I think it's one of those things where if you as a company are showcasing that culture, work-life balance, that's where millennials and Gen Zs are going to be more flexible.
I 100% agree with that because I just know like my friends and everything. I'm 37, so like my best friend, she is unfortunately her husband passed away last year, so she's a single mother with 2 kids, and she was applying for a job a couple months ago, and they wanted her in the office like 4 days a week. And it was past Hazleton and travel, and it was a great offer, but she turned it down because she couldn't do it because her current job let her drop off the kids in the morning, come in at 10 o'clock, handle what she needed to handle, work 2 days from home. So for her, I think that just shows that while the money was better for that offer that she turned down, the flexibility and being able to be there for her children meant so much more.
To add on to that, so there's another company that created a working mom. They call it the working moms. I think they try the single moms and single dads thing where the shift starts at 9 and ends at 2. And so it's one of those things. It's like 25 or it's like a 30-hour work shift, but it's one of those things where all of a sudden that got filled up almost instantly. Because then they found out that, wow, there's a massive demographic of single parents who want to work but can't work 40 hours a week. But if all of a sudden we can create a stable thing that they can still qualify for benefits and insurance and all that stuff, and they can work from 9 till 3, that's a phenomenal opportunity for a lot of places. And it's just one of those things, they exist. It's just you need to explore that and see what works for you, and maybe even go out there and say, hey, what if we opened up this? What feedback can we get?
And as leaders, we also have to make sure that flexibility is offered to those individuals that are 55 plus that need to take care of their mother or father.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, again, I'll kind of go back, is it needs to be inclusive so we will be able to drive the capabilities, drive the skills, and drive the numbers that we need from an organizational perspective.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
and that's my point.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Jake, in your experience, and I go back to that slide you put up where you surveyed the kids as to what they want to be when they grow up, and STEM and business and marketing and IT and cyber were all on there, right?
Yeah.
And we do the same thing through our dream team, and we've got more than 9,000 data points, and it probably proves out, we'd have to run the numbers, similar to that. But when we boil it down, we go around the room and we ask the kids, we say, well, that's music to our ears, because manufacturing is business and marketing and finance and IT, right? So we say, you all want to work in manufacturing, but of the ones that said manufacturing specifically, what did you mean? And typically what they mean by that is touching the product, right? And working, quote unquote, on the shop floor. right? And so I think one of the things we're charged with is making sure that people understand there's more to quote-unquote manufacturing than working on the shop floor. That 9 out of 10 of those, or let's say probably 50% of those careers are in manufacturing. But we lump it all into this thing called manufacturing, which means working on the shop floor, so none of y'all said that, or very few of you said that. And then having a discussion over what it really means to be working on the shop floor, which really means engaging with these new technologies. I think is that your experience as well, as that when a kid or a younger person says manufacturing, they really mean working on the shop floor?
Yeah, what we found out, and it wasn't one of those things, I wish we had more time with the surveys and stuff like that. And actually, I do have another survey going out where next week we're busing in 8,500 high school students into an expo hall, and back in Grand Rapids. So where we are busing kids in from 27 school districts, 8,500 students in. They're going to go to 5 industry segments. So they're going to go to manufacturing, construction, agriculture, healthcare, and then informational technologies. And then they have 45 minutes to go to each segment that has about 40 companies from each segment. And then while we're there, we have a massive survey chart that kids are going to take stickers, and they're going to place stickers on these walls depending on what industries they want to go into. So I'll try and get you that data when we're done, because it's going to be a survey from about 4,000 students on what industries they want to go into, what do they feel is important to them, what technologies are going to excite them the most, and hopefully get some more refined data on that. You know, it's one of those things where I think when you can show a process that's exciting and the piece of equipment and how it's made, I think it's good. But if it's going out there, I'm just gonna pull up an example of I go onto a website, and let's just pick up Fanikin here. CRX line card, and let's just say I'm just looking for. But for me, it's one of those things. Is I've literally seen people take a picture like this and post it on LinkedIn and be like, "Look at our new robot." And that's what they do. That's what I mean by product. Now, if you were to be like, "Oh, hey, here's this new CRX and it's doing this cool machine tending application that's doing something," that's amazing because you're actually showcasing what it's doing. But information like this, where you're just posting a line card, it's so dull and no emotion and stuff behind it. That's kind of what I meant by don't talk about your product, talk about your people. Or you could talk about how does your product, more important, even better, how does your product actually do something that matters? I think that's what's important here. So I'll go on. Let's just see if I pop up on Bing Google search real quick. Oh, there you go. First one. Means I'm good on data SEO. Let's get that. Okay, so here is articles. Here's today with what we just posted. Look at that. There's PSA. And let's see if I can. It's going to yell at me. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so here's a video where we're highlighting a process where it's a high-speed bacon slicer for a manufacturing company. Obviously, it's one of those things where if you took a picture of bacon, it's not exciting. If you took a picture of the machine, it's not exciting. But if you show that in a video and say, "Hey, here's how bacon slices are manufactured," that's pretty darn cool. People are going to like it and they're going to engage with something like that. That's what I mean by tell a story, highlight your people, talk about what you're solving, not just the product itself. Does that make a little more sense? Okay. And that's really what I got my following in a lot of cases that way, is because I go around and I look for videos like this, and I get a lot of fun engagement. Here's another one where
Jake, where'd you get this idea to do this on?
For videos and stuff. Oh, I loved how it's made as a kid. And so for me, I thought, how could I create and inspire my generation where I know people love short form content? So how can I share a story of manufacturing in under 60 seconds? And that's my whole entire story of when I'm creating content and video, I'm looking out there, how can I talk about manufacturing, give an interesting statistic, talk about manufacturing, talk about what it does, talk about how it impacts your life, and then share it out there. Oh yeah. And you're in Scranton, Pennsylvania, giving a presentation. It's unreal at times, absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right, so I got a different question for you. So you're talking about millennials and manufacturing. So fly the W.
Yeah.
Fly the W.
Go Cubs.
So, how does that fit? What's the Cubs angle for you in the manufacturing millennial? Because you're talking about marketing, you're talking about connection.
Yeah.
You're talking. So tell us a little
Branding.
bit more. Tell us a little bit more about the inside
Yeah.
baseball.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's go.
So okay. Great question. So for me, it's one of those things is where when you come into social media, you're competing for people's really attention, their space, their brand recognition, and for me, in the industry where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people, I figured out how do I keep.
They hate us, Cub fans. Like,
No, they don't. We're the lovable losers. Unless you're in St. Louis or Milwaukee, because we stole their coach. But I mean, so for me, I think it's important to create a brand that's exciting and engaging. So that's why I do it with the Cubs. Where I'm a Cubs fan, and I during the pandemic, you'll if you go to my early videos, like early 2020 when I started shooting stuff, I wore a Cubs hat once in a while, and then a person commented, and I was like, "Oh, go Cubs!" And I'm thinking, there's something out there that was not related anywhere to my video whatsoever, but it was something that a person connected with me on, to where they said, "Okay, I'm just going to wear a Cubs hat again." And then people after a while they said, "Oh yeah, you're the guy that wears the Cubs hat that talks about manufacturing." And so it was one of those things where I'm sure there's a whole psychology behind it, where people over there can talk about individual psychology, but for me, people just recognize me now when I go to a trade show of 40,000 people and just stop me and say, "I know who you are because of this." Where like last week I took 270 selfies in Atlanta because people said, "Oh, you're that guy online," which is just crazy to me. But that's how the whole Cubs thing started. We're the lovable losers. It's an easy brand. People can pick up on. People who love baseball can do that. Everyone knows it's the Cubs Chicago seed, and that's kind of how that whole thing started. Any other questions? Sorry, I kind of
We're gonna come back. So we're actually gonna come back.